Sebastian is originally from Argentina, and he now lives in Europe, in Germany and Austria, since late in the year 2000. Sebastian's been reading the Urantia book since early 2001. Correct me if any of these facts aren't right, Sebastian. After 10 years of solitary lecture, Sebastian finally sought contact with other readers in Germany in 2011. He started attending their meetings in Frankfurt and the European meetings in Berlin and Budapest. He began working with Urantia Association International as the European Continental Coordinator in 2018. And that's still his position. He sits on the ISB, and he's a very delightful person. So I'll hand over to you, Sebastian.
Thank you, Kathleen. Thanks for the introduction, and good morning, everybody. Good evening, good afternoon. Whatever our place to you. It's very, very nice to be here. Very nice to see you all. So let me start my slides, which I will share. Today I want to talk about assertiveness, the topic of assertiveness, and more specifically in the Jesus style. This is the agenda of my talk. In the part 1, I want to introduce you to the different communication styles. In part 2, we will explore a little bit what makes Jesus' style of assertiveness unique and where it comes from. And part 3, we will talk about getting the upper hand, whatever that means. We'll see about that. And then we'll have time for discussion. So let's hope that yeah, my presentation will take roughly maybe 20 minutes or so. And then we'll have time to discuss about it. So, part 1, I want to give an introduction to the different communication styles. And for that, I have a couple of rhetorical questions. I ask you regarding questions. Maybe it would be good if we waited until the discussion time. Please note them down, and we'll handle them there. But first, a rhetorical question. Does any of this happen to you? Maybe sometimes you get angry at people, or you want to impose your opinion on others, or interrupt others, and so on. If any of this happens to you, you might be using the aggressive communication style. Or maybe any of this happened to you. You have difficulty saying no, you seek approval or to be liked. You prefer not to voice your opinion, avoid conflict. You have difficulty stating your needs and so on. Then you might be or have been using the passive communication style. And yet there is one other one. Maybe any of this happens to you. You might agree to do a favor, but secretly you resent doing it, or resent the other person, or expect something in return that maybe doesn't materialize, and then you have more resentment. You smile, but you despise people inside you. You're sarcastic and you let hurtful comments out. Then you might be using the passive-aggressive communication style. And I have a confession to make. I've been victim of all 3 of these not so optimal communication styles. I struggled expressing myself, disagreeing, setting boundaries, also seeking approval. So this is what led me to look for answers. And to recap, there was the aggressive communication style, the passive and passive-aggressive, and of course, the alternative to all these 3 is the assertive communication style, which is not trying to impose yourself or your opinion or will to others. Also not being submissive and passive, to take everything from others, not saying no, not setting boundaries, but a healthy communication style in which you express yourself, you let things out of your heart, of your mind. But whatever happens after you do that, that's not for you to control. Everybody else has the right to take or not what you say. And so when I hear about this, I said, okay, I have to get a book. I got a book. And I began reading it, and it was great. And I also realized that, hey, even Jesus set boundaries, right? For example, there are many situations in which he said no, or he disappointed people. For example, in this one, where he rejected going with Andrew and healing even more people after he had done so. Or this one, where he refused to, I don't remember what he refused here. It's taken out of context, but I think it was also getting to heal people. And many times he refused to participate in discussions, especially with the apostles and the disciples of John the Baptist. And of course, when he was arrested and accused, he very often declined to reply and give testimony. So, okay, assertiveness, cool. It was my new weapon of choice, so to say. So, what could go wrong? This was kind of the situation. It was like a kid with a new toy, with a new, very dangerous toy, actually, because I learned the hard way that in the wrong hands, when you don't have much experience, it can go wrong, and it went wrong. I began asserting myself, but people still got hurt or angry. I also became more angry and resentful. I always was on the watch for people trespassing my boundaries, and I also realized I still could not express myself in a calm and relaxed manner. So at this point, I want to ask you, does maybe this also sound familiar? Maybe there's the kind of tactless, over-assertive type. People that voice their opinion, but disregarding the feelings of others, and which have an opinion on everything, and they just love to disagree. They are also not the best listeners. They are inflexible and unavailable. For example, if you ask for their time or for a favor, they really put themselves always first. And they maybe have an aggrandized self, and in summary, they're not so fun to be around with. So it seemed that maybe this is what was happening to me. And this kind of reminds me of this quote. Goodness always compels respect, but when it's devoid of grace, it often repels affection. Goodness is universally attractive only when it is gracious. Goodness is effective only when it is attractive. Ouch. So what was missing? I wondered, and I wondered for many years. And I looked for better ways. And for Jesus, it seemed to work very well. Even if he had enemies, many people liked him. And he always seemed to be calm and not lose it. And at some points, I thought that probably it's not fair because he was a creator's son, right? Incarnated in human form. And I was just a poor mortal, fruit of evolution and my life circumstances. It was only recently that it dawned on me that I discovered that Jesus not only had to deal with difficult people and difficult situations, but in fact, he mastered these situations with a superior kind of assertiveness. And I think it's a kind that we also can use in our lives. So it is that I want to invite you to explore with me in part 2, the assertiveness in Jesus' style. So looking at the Urantia book, I identify 2 things that I was missing. A more founded sense of self-respect and also cooperation of one's fellows, in the words of Ronan of Alexandria. Let's look at them in turn. Self-respect. So it is without doubt that Jesus had self-respect. We find it in this quote. What he aimed at in his life appears to have been a superb self-respect. When I read this, I thought to myself, wow, yeah, I want that. So where did that self-respect originate? For that, let's look at this quote. Spiritual living mightily increases through self-respect. But self-respect is not self-admiration. Self-respect is always coordinated with love and service of one's fellows. It is not possible to respect yourself more than you love your neighbor. The one is the measure of the capacity for the other. Okay, sounds good. So I could put it like this: self-respect coordinated with love and service. I will build up on kind of a diagram to help me understand how all these things are related, and also hopefully to help you. But there is also the thing. You cannot truly love your fellows by a mere act of the will. Love is only born through an understanding of your neighbor's motives and sentiments. So this is where love comes from, understanding. So, okay, understanding leads to love and service, which is coordinated with self-respect. Next, cooperation of one's fellows. So I got this from Ronan of Alexandria. The immature individual arouses the antagonism of his fellows. Maybe what was my case. The mature man wins the hearty cooperation of his associates, thereby many times multiplying the fruits of his life efforts. Another quote. You cannot hope for a large measure of success in either secular or religious work unless you can learn how to persuade your fellows to prevail with men. You simply must have tact and tolerance. And when Rodan looks at Jesus, my philosophy tells me that there are times when I must fight, if need be, for the defense of my concept of righteousness. But I doubt not that the master, with a more mature type of personality, would easily and gracefully gain an equal victory by his superior and winsome technique of tact and tolerance. Again, tact and tolerance. Okay, tact and tolerance. But how? And I found this quote, which I think gives the solution. If someone irritates you, causes feelings of resentment, you should sympathetically seek to discern his viewpoint, his reasons for such objectionable conduct. If once you understand your neighbor, you will become tolerant. There we have it. And this tolerance will grow into friendship and ripen into love. So to complete the graph now, understanding, you become tolerant, ripens into friendship, and then love. And tolerance, tact and tolerance, leads to the cooperation of one fellows. So all together now, we can complete this And we see that we start with understanding and everything else unfolds. Have the cooperation of one fellows, and we gain self-respect when coordinated with love and service. But there was still an issue. And this leads me to part 3, a pesky issue, this one. If someone irritates you, causes feelings of resentment. And there was the issue of these. But you're destined to live a narrow and mean life if you learn to love only those who love you. Ouch. So at this point, many of us could ask, or maybe when you see this for the first time, either in the Bible or the Urantia book, is this really necessary? But Jesus seems very serious about this. He says, I say to you, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, and praise for those who despitefully use you. And whatsoever you believe that I would do to them, to men, do you also to them. Kind of hard. Another one. Pray for the welfare of your families, friends, and fellows, but especially pray for those who curse you and make loving petitions for those who persecute you. At this point, one could ask, man, are you serious? So what would Jesus insist on this? This seems very, very counterintuitive. It is not what we naturally do. First, I thought it was capricious, some kind of ideal that was meant only for people like Jesus, Creator, Son, incarnated in the flesh, man revealing God, and so on, not for the mere mortals among us. But at some point, I suspected that there might be a good reason for that. It was not just to make our lives more difficult, but maybe to make our lives more fulfilled. Could that be? So I began to realize that this is what happens, and probably also happens to you. Well, I'm pretty sure that when you resent someone, that someone has power over you, has power over your emotions, and in your mind has power over the situation. They have indirectly the upper hand on your feelings. You're a passive victim of your resentment. You cannot think clearly. You cannot approach this person in a calm way and communicate calmly in their presence. You either resort to the aggressive style or the passive style, where you submit, or the passive aggressive. But this didn't seem to be Jesus' case, and this also does not seem to be the case for people that can deal with confrontations in a calm way. So does this sound familiar to you, being the victim of emotions and not getting the upper hand? I want to read to you a part of document 130, one story in Jesus's trip in the Mediterranean, which I think illustrates this point, where he makes, I think, direct reference to this situation. Document 130 at Caesarea. You find this at section 2. Jesus and his friends tarried in Caesarea beyond the time expected because one of the huge steering paddles of the vessel on which they intended to embark was discovered to be in danger of claving. One of the young men who worked with Jesus one day on the steering paddle became much interested in the words, which he dropped from hour to hour as they toiled in the shipyard. When Jesus intimated that the Father in heaven was interested in the welfare of his children on earth, this young Greek, Anaxand, said, "If the gods are interested in me, then why do they not remove the cruel and unjust foreman of this workshop?" Have you been in a situation like this? He was startled when Jesus replied, "Since you know the ways of kindness and value justice, perhaps the gods have brought this erring man near that you may lead him into the better way. Maybe you are the salt which is to make this brother more agreeable to all other men. That is, if you have not lost your savor. As it is, this man is your master, in that his evil ways unfavorably influence you. Why not assert your mastery of evil by virtue of the power of goodness and thus become the master of all relations between the two of you?" You get what I'm saying? It was then that I understood that the alternative was to have good wishes for people, difficult people in life situations. Have good wishes for them. And love is wanting good for someone. When I did that, I became calm in my mind. And then in those situations, and I had the emotional and psychological upper hand over the situation. And ultimately, this is what I wanted, to be able to peacefully resolve the dispute. As a bonus, the relationship would be restored, at least not destroyed, and maybe also put in a better new level, and I gain more self-respect. This getting the upper hand, by the way, is nothing more and less than what the Urantia book mentions, and the Bible also, returning good for evil, even destroying evil with good or with love. And so I came to the conclusion that things which seem very hard, like pray for your enemies, love your neighbors, and so on, are to be put in the same category as other things, which are good for us, but hard to do, at least initially, like brushing your teeth, doing exercise, or eating healthy. I have no problem with brushing my teeth, but I have to confess that I have problems with doing exercise and well, eating healthy also. I try, but not always. I'm a very big fan of pizza and hamburgers. So praying, worshiping is also, I think, something that does not come naturally to us, but also yields many, many benefits. And ultimately, loving your enemies is also to be put in these categories of things that are counterintuitive, hard to do, but yield benefits as well. The benefit being really to be above the situation that is disturbing you and being the master of the relationship between you and the person making trouble in your life. So I would encourage you to try it. It could change your life for the better, as it changed mine. So to conclude and summarize what I think is assertiveness in Jesus' style. Normal assertiveness is good, but it can be repelling if done wrong, if it misses some key components. Jesus shows how to achieve true self-respect through love and service, cooperation with one's fellows through tact and tolerance, and getting the upper hand psychologically, emotionally, and in the situation by praying for and loving one's enemies. And that's it. Thank you very much for listening. And now we would have time for open discussions. Thank you.
Sorry, can you share the last slide again? It was very good because it's, I mean,
This here, you mean this, the summary?
Yeah, the summary. Thank you.
Okay. Mm-hmm. You have a question about that?
No, I just wanted to read it again because you want to, I was taking notes and then you went fast.
Well,
but I think it's a good point because assertiveness is not done correctly. It can be taken wrongly. Yeah.
So remember the slide with this guy. I don't know if some of you know him. It's a fictional character from a sitcom. It's very funny, very hilarious.
From The Office, huh?
Yeah, this was the assertiveness not done right, so to say. So you can come across as pedantic or arrogant. You are very good in defending your interests and voicing your opinion, while at the same time not caring about the other person say, but it is devoid of grace, let's say. And I think what really works, not only for Jesus, for any of us. By the way, I don't think that Jesus asks things which we cannot do. That would be ridiculous. What works is really to get an interest in the other person, to bring the other person into the equation for you. This is more or less what I wanted to say. So it would be interesting for me to know if any of this resonated with any of you, if you have been in similar situations, and if you have had trouble dealing with these counterintuitive things, or anything that you would like to share.
I'd like to say, Sebastian, that yes, I definitely can relate to just about everything you said. I think it's such a human condition situation that you've just presented that we all have to struggle with and grapple with. And the Urantia book certainly gives us a lot of answers for that to make us into better people. I still find when there comes a point, I think with some people, you know, if you're really trying to love someone who is just really, you know, causing you a lot of problems. Yeah. I know this idea of it, that means that they have power over you. I think sometimes to get to the point where you can feel comfortable and not feel the emotional resentment or the you know, the uncomfortable feeling you have in not being able to love that person, or regardless of what you try and do, because some people really can be they're not interested in whether you like them or not. You know, they're not interested in trying to be nice people. They're making choices in their life that is constantly creating bad situations and bad feelings with everyone. So, you know, there are people like that. And I think my feeling toward that is sometimes you just really have to put people out of your, you know, you don't expose yourself if you can possibly help it. If you've tried everything you can, and if it's something that you really want to try and conquer, but it just doesn't work.
Yes.
I find sometimes it's best that, you know what, it's not, I'm not going to keep trying. I'm not going to keep bothering with this. You know, you need to just keep them out of your life somehow. You know what?
Yes. Yeah.
What can you say about that?
And this would, oh, you touched many points. Well, this last one I think is has to do with, first you have to love yourself. I mean, at any point, this means that you disregard yourself, your sanity, your psychological stability, and if also Jesus said you don't throw pearls to the swine. I mean, if something is a lost cause or something exceeds you, there is no point in in stressing yourself to the point of exhaustion. Another thing that I wanted to mention is something that I got from a very intelligent evangelical pastor, which I recommend you to listen to, Dr. Tony Evans. And he said something like, to love somebody, you don't have to like them. To like and to love are different things. And this is where I think fatherly love comes into play, which also Jesus admonished his apostles, and I think all of us to exercise. I don't have kids, but I can imagine that kids can sometimes be very troublesome, and that you don't like everything they do, or they did, or maybe they broke something, or maybe they're giving you a difficult time. And in those situations, it's not like you are all roses. You are maybe upset with them, but it does not stop the fact that you don't cease to love them, in the sense that you would not stop doing what is best for them, even if you reproach them or want them, you go to bed now. You're doing that in their best interest, and you are not taking revenge on them or so. So this is difficult, but I think there's a difference between liking the behavior of somebody and still at the end of the day, it's not be victim of the situation. And I think you do that by diffusing person from situation, or as it says in the Bible and in the Urantia book, to hate the sin, love the sinner. And love is not always rosy and my feelings are at peace, but you don't cease to have the best interests of the other person in mind.
Yeah, that's good. I think yes. No, that's okay, Sam. Go ahead.
No, I was thinking when you were commenting that I think this is very important to know our own boundaries. What you were saying, when we are dealing with people that, what do you say, like people that are not interested in, being nice and so on. It's important to, what also Sebastian said, that have this kind of what I was talking about before, self-compassion and love for yourself, and see where are your really boundaries towards that person. But that doesn't limit us to really connect with what we have in common. What I was talking, this common humanity, that this person also suffers also, even if they are like they are, it has a reason. And that was what Jesus was telling all the time, that you have really to know the motives behind that behavior. And I've seen that again and again. People behave in some way, but it's because they have a need behind that behavior that has not been fulfilled. And sometimes the reaction to that is really with aggression, because this part of our brain, which is prepared to fight and flight and freeze, is there. This stressful part is how our way to react to bad situations in life is fighting, is defending ourselves. So that is very common in many people. And I think that is, if we know that, if we can create what Sebastian was doing, this kind of space that allows us to not go into the drama of the situation, into the emotions and the feelings that can really carry us away in this current of, inspiration, then we can create this space, then we can really create this ability to understand, and then to have compassion, to love, and to respond in a way, not to react, to respond. And that is only possible, in my experience, with really being aware of the moment. Come to the moment where you can really be okay. What is, it can be, but going back into your breath, through the breath, the connection with our thought adjuster, which is so important. We are really aware of that, many of us. And sometimes we forget, in the chaos and or in the, but that helps a lot. And in my experience, if you work with that, then you are able really to create this connection, because this love at the end and this compassion and kindness, really, it flows through you. It's not that it comes through you, because we have our limitations, as you said. We cannot really, sometimes what is to love our enemy? Difficult, no? But if we get connected, then I think it can flow. And for me, it helps me to connect in this common human experience. Okay, this person also has family, also suffers, also experience joy. What is exploring that a little bit? If we can, if I'm not able to, because for some moments I'm not able, then go back to myself and then, okay, what is what I need? Nurture myself.
Yeah.
I need distance. I need maybe to, to go away of this person. Sometimes it's necessarily, but still, I can wish good towards this person. I can still, what Sebastian was saying, I don't have to like it, but I can still allow this love from our Father to go towards this person.
I think that at least if the loving part is the last one. Again, let's remember my slide here. Well, the diagram and the statement, you cannot love somebody by a mere act of the will. And we should not be hard to ourselves if we realize, oh, but I cannot love this person. I cannot. It starts with understanding. At least what we can do is ask, why are they behaving like this? Why are they giving me such a hard time? And this could be maybe, hopefully, the beginning of a better way of handling the situation. And again, the topic of taking care of oneself is very important, which we should touch upon, Sandra, and knowing our own limitations. And yeah, we are learning. It takes practice, and we are human, and yeah, we have to be also aware of what is going on with ourselves, also understand ourselves and nurture ourselves if we want to help others or deal with the situation in a better way. Norman,
No,
yeah, sorry, Chris. Norman Weiss wanted to say something.
Yeah, Norman, yes.
Hi, this is this is Norman and Diana down here in New Zealand. Hi, nice to be here. I had some comments that I'd like to make, and maybe a few insights. Maybe first of all, Sebastian, I'd really like to commend you on your talk. One aspect that I really certainly do appreciate is that it was not all theoretical, but you shared a lot about yourself and the changes that have occurred in your life and with you as a result of your changing attitude and you're willing to take on different values. And also I'd like to commend Sandra. It was a very good talk, a very good series of meditations. I appreciated your definition of compassion. Compassion, I think you said, was a feeling for the pain of others and a desire to alleviate that pain and suffering. Is that sort of close? Yeah. Anyway, for me, I find myself in my situation that especially when I was doing your meditation, Sandra, looking for someone that I had difficulties with. And so for many, many years, I have not had real difficulties with anybody. Except
the President of the United States.
As Diana says, except the President of the United States. And so that brings up my question, also related to Sebastian's talk, because I believe Sebastian's talk and his ideas are focused on the individuals close to us in our lives that we interact with and how we respond to those people and that sort of thing. But it does not speak to those situations where you have people like leaders of the world, people who are in charge of entire countries, or people who are in charge of corporations and things like that, that exploit other people or that cause great suffering amongst large numbers of people. And for me, I find it very, very difficult to feel in my heart a love for these people who do these things, who perpetrate these horrible acts, and who perpetrate these horrible policies that affect so many people. And so it's been hard for me to come to terms with that. However, I sort of had a bit of a revelation recently, because Diane and I are doing this UBIS course on the Supreme Being. And I think, but I'm not sure if I remember correctly, that that in there was an expression of this idea that in the evolution of the universe, of the grand universe, through which the Supreme becomes realized, that there is everything happening, the whole range of experience. And there are going to be people who suffer, and there are going to be tragedies, and there are going to be misuse of power. There's going to be all sorts of horrible things happening. And it all has to do with how we as individuals respond to those. And so that I took that on board a little bit, but still, I really find it hard to have any love in my heart for these, what I consider to be horrible individuals. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Norm. Very, very insightful, and also a good, nice challenge. And I understand what you're saying. I would say that, yeah, at least what we can have is understanding. And understanding means these horrible people, leaders of the world, why are they doing this? I don't agree what they do. What they do is wrong. What they do is evil. Why? Maybe, but because the fact is they are having the upper hand on you. In you hating them, not they have, but in you're not as free as you could be, let's say, and not as happy as you could be. Well, happy is something else, but if you could try to understand, not to condone, not to respect, but understand what led them there to be the way they are. I don't know, the way psychologists understand how a psychopath or a criminal or a murderer, the mind of a killer works, if they are in such a field. They find it horrible what they do, but they can explain what led them to do what they did. And I think for some things this might be the limit to where we can go, but still trying to understand the other side, trying to understand these difficult, maybe distorted personalities can help you. It is about helping you not be a victim of these feelings, if that makes sense.
Can I say something also, Sebastian?
Yeah. I'm not moderating, sorry.
No, it's
just before you do, Sandra, I think Chappie wanted to say something before, and Norman was in front of him. So
yes, I mean, what I think is that it's not only about love, but also, I mean, what Sebastian, I think, key message wanted to say, it's also about putting limits. I mean, because there are people that, you know, they are, how to say, they have a kind heart, and sometimes they are overthrown by others. So I think it's also important to know your limits, but also, as Sebastian said, to be able to do it with love. But I think it's very important.
Yourself.
Sorry?
Love to yourself, you mean, or?
Both love to yourself in order to be able to put the limits, and also love to others to also to put to put the boundaries with love. Yeah, because sometimes people who have a kind heart, when they do it, when they put the boundaries, they do it without love. You know, I mean, it's like they explode. So, but I think it's the key focus is also on both aspects.
Could I say something?
Oh, Stephen Carthy,
Yeah.
hello.
Hello. Yeah, I always think of when people are doing terrible things, the way Jesus thought about it was that they just don't know what they're doing. They know not what they do. And there's some wonderful bits about motivation too. If we would understand the motivations of the objectionable people that we come across, if we could really understand what had happened to them and so on, then we might love them and we might help turn them around. Of course, that's difficult for political figures who are doing, you know, maybe evil works, but I'm thinking about the normal run-of-the-mill objectionable person that you come across. And so there's that little bit, I don't know whether you know, number of you would know that in the Urantia book about the saber-toothed tiger standing, you know, behind a family, and the father comes out and he's sort of looking pretty fierce and not something that you would think is a very peaceable sort of look. But we understand that there's a wonderful motivation behind that. And sometimes people that are very defensive are like that. And we just need to try and love them and understand them. That's my little spiel. I'll go.
Well said, Stephen. Good, yeah. Sandra, you were going to say something before.
Yeah, I was thinking what Norman was commenting, and I think that it's difficult for me. Happened also like that, and I started to work in this Metta Bhavana meditation, in this loving kindness meditation, also with leaders around the world. In the difficult person, it doesn't have to be love. You know, sometimes the love cannot really, as I said, come ourselves, because we are really limited in our human capacity. But if we connect and we can let this love, like give it to the Father, I give it to you. I cannot love this person, but you can. So, and I think it may have a response or a reaction. And I also think when, like, the politics around the world and the people, even if there something terrible is happening, they are really showing. I try to see what is the positive that is coming from all this. Like in the example of Trump, you know, people in the United States getting together and really fighting for some things that they wouldn't probably not get together and fight for if they wouldn't have a leader like that, you know. So, but I think that what helps me, and I think it has really in the long term an effect, is to practice this compassion and loving kindness. And it cannot happen through us, and through him, because our limitation is human.
that is a good point to when you reach your limits to say, okay, God, Father, I cannot do this. You take over it, or maybe also help me to be able to do this, or show me maybe what are the next steps, or. But yeah, in any way, recognizing our own limitation, like, okay, this is where until here I can do no more, and then appealing for divine help.
That is more like praying for the person, really.
Yeah, but if you cannot pray for the person, you can say, help, Father, help me pray for the person. Even if you cannot do it, then you ask for help.
Yeah.
Show me what I'm missing. Show me, I don't know, what do we have to learn?
Yes, I thought I'd just make a comment on that, Sebastian. You know, you would you're going to try to do everything in your power. You've got the right to vote. You can sign online petitions that are becoming very powerful nowadays, and other things like that. But your very important message that your change was that maybe you were saying once upon a time you would have been in a tight, tense little ball. I hate that person. What are they doing there? They're destroying a country. A country's being wrecked right now. And your take-home message for me is that yes, you may not like what they do. You may not like them, but you have to calm down and relax and see where, you know, maybe even they had troubles as a child, maybe they were abused, whatever factor has led them to where they were, and you can do what you can, but by making yourself calm and applying the strategies you outlined, at least you're the one that's freed in that circumstance.
What I would like to take as a point is, don't be a victim. Be dynamic. This is, I think, what Jesus also said with the turn the other cheek. If you remember, he didn't say allow yourself to be slapped. No, dynamically do something proactive to get the upper hand on the situation. Inside yourself, don't be a victim psychologically, mentally, spiritually, and if the other person is part of your life, also in returning good for evil, dynamically with action, you are the master of the situation, like in the example of Anaxand. So yeah, for me that's the lesson, that you don't allow yourself to be a victim and say poor me, or oh yeah, I have this, but no, even by the non-physical act of praying for somebody or trying to understand, you take steps into getting out of the victim role. And this is something I think that is very present in the Urantia book.
And Luis has just raised his hand. Luis?
Thanks, Sebastian.
Thank you, Kathleen. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Good to see so many of you and some new faces and old faces. Well, known faces. Thank you, Sebastian. Sorry that I joined a little bit late. Had a bit of a late waking up here in Switzerland. There are two things that I just would like to take from what has been said, which for me are very important. One of them is that there is something going on, and try to help them reflect on their own behaviors that sometimes can yield those fruits of the Spirit that ultimately might help us together both grow spiritually as a result of the negative or destructive behaviors. That's what I wanted to say.
Thank you, Luis. And that brings us to the end of Sebastian's hour. Very stimulating, Sebastian. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone who's had some input to that.